Hi guys, it's Chris here from Finershots.com, and in this tutorial I'm going to take you through my editing process in Lightroom for landscape fine art photography. So without further ado, let's dive in. So going into Lightroom then, as you can see here, I've got two pictures I've taken over the last couple of months in the UK here. And on the left here we've got a shot taken in Lincoln in the UK, and we've got on the right here a shot taken in the Peak District. Both awesome places in my opinion, and if you haven't checked them out, highly recommend checking them out. But I'm going to show you, I've gone for kind of fine art effect kind of edits on these for the post-processing, and I'm going to show you how I achieve this effect in each of the images. So let's dive in. So open up the first one then, in the develop module. First thing I start by doing is cropping the image. So for this one, I think it works out well. It's a 16:9. There are, however, distractions on the left here or on the right side of the picture, sorry, that I'm trying to keep away from. But yeah, I think 16:9 really gets in quite close and gives you kind of that panoramic feel. And its effects that I personally love. So yeah, cropping a 16:9, making sure that the shot's straight as well. Then go into what I call the basic editing workflow. So bringing down the highlights, although don't need to do that too much. There's not very much detail in the sky because there weren't very many clouds or any clouds that evening, unfortunately. Do enjoy when there's clouds because it brings out a lot in the of extra drama in the picture. But yeah, we can bring up the shadows, and as you can see, I shot this raw with a Sony A7 III, so got quite a lot of detail still in the picture. Then bring up the whites and bring down the blacks, and what I like to do here is hold down the Option key if you've got a Mac, and on Windows hold down the Alt key. Then you can click and drag the slider up, and then what you see emerging here is pure white. So those areas which are highlighted are completely saturated white. We don't want that, because that effectively means the detail has been completely washed out. So I tend to go a little bit lower than that. We do the same with the blacks when we bring the blacks down. Again, that's completely saturated, so just below the or above the threshold. That kind of works. Then start to look at the white balance and the profiles. I tend to personally just go through the white balance profiles they've already got here and see what works as kind of like a base, and then you can kind of edit it as you see fit. Just going through these daylight, I think it represents what I kind of saw at the time of shooting, and also I just like the effect. Gives that kind of fine art effect and feel. So for the profile then, we can go in, and there are many different options. So as you can see, these are the Adobe options here that we've got. On the right hand side, you've got a tab and it's got camera matching, and you can go through, and these are some of the settings. I had a Sony camera, as I said, and yeah, these are some of the built-in ones from Sony. But yeah, Fujifilm have got some incredible ones as well, for those who shoot with Fuji. But yeah, I'm going to stick today with the Adobe stuff. I quite like landscape and vivid usually, are my favourites. So I'm going to stick with vivid and daylight, and then we can adjust them as required later on. Come into the presence tab then, so there's texture, clarity and dehaze. I tend to leave texture and dehaze unless it's really required. There's also already quite a lot of texture in the image anyway. If we bring up the texture anymore, you can just see there's quite a lot of, it's almost distracting the amount of texture that's brought to the image. So I tend to keep it, and if anything, bring it down a little bit, it kind of softens the image. With clarity, I also bring the clarity down. So about -15, -20 usually. It just adds a softens a touch to the image. Otherwise, if you add clarity, I mean, you can see how contrasty the image has got. I kind of like the soft feel to it. We go down further, come to noise reduction. There's not too much noise in the picture anyway. But what we can do is add in, and if there was a lot of noise and grain, you can use the noise reduction and add in some sharpening. And one top tip I got from, I don't know if you've heard of Serge Romelli, he's a French photographer and got a quite a successful YouTube channel. So one of the top tips that he's given me over the years of me studying his tutorials online, if you get the noise reduction, say for example here we've only put in 20 of noise reduction, he adds in the amount of sharpening to make the sum equal to 100. So where we've got 20 of noise reduction here on the luminance, he would add in 80 of sharpening. I quite like the effect it gives as well, so it's something, a top tip that I've learned from him. But yeah, I'll check out his channel if you haven't already. It's a lot of top tips. So that kind of completes just the basic level of post-processing. You can mess around with the exposure and the contrast as well. It's already fairly well exposed, although there's quite a lot of dark in the image. So what we can do is brighten it up a bit, add maybe some contrast. Cool, so I'm fairly happy with that. What we're going to do now then is go into some of the more local adjustments. So we've got here graduated filter, and what I tend to do with that is bring it up from the bottom as we are here. Kind of darken the image from the bottom, and then do the same from above. You can even lower the temperature on that as well and bring back some of the darker blue in the sky. And again, this is fine art landscape photography, so you've got a degree of an artistic license if you want to use it. What you can see at the top here though is where we've brought the graduated filter in, it's starting to darken the top of the house here as well. So what we can do is go on to range mask, luminance. I like to show the luminance mask so you can see everything in red has been affected by the graduated filter at the moment. And if we change the range, pushes all that to the background if you like. So now you can see the house hasn't been affected. Another way we can do that if we haven't got the luminance mask on is hold down the option key whilst we do this, adjust the range. Now everything you see in the picture isn't being affected by the graduated filter. So now we've done that. Of course, the reason we've done that with the graduated filter is it kind of darkens the top image and darkens the bottom of the image, and that brings the viewer's eyes, because your eyes are more attracted to the brighter parts of the photo, so it brings the eyes into the picture and kind of draws the viewer's eyes where you want them. So that's another kind of top tip. What I'm going to do now is use the brush tool. And then with the brush tool you can make kind of more local adjustments just to refine different parts of the image. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of paint some exposure. Again, this is the exposure up to the maximum at the moment, so it's a bit too much, but at least at the moment I can see where I'm painting that exposure. And the purpose for doing this is kind of leading the viewer's eyes into the picture. I'm going to bring the exposure down just so it's not overexposed or doesn't look ridiculous. And then what we can do is I'll show you before and after. So that's before it, that's after, and it kind of just adds a little bit more to the image, makes it a bit more dynamic. Cool. The other thing I'm going to focus on then for using the paintbrush tool or the brush tool is the cathedral here. there are actually lights which light up the front of this, which had turned on I think at this time. But one of the main features of the image is the wonderful cathedral we've got here in the background. It's kind of like, I feel, because there's quite a big hill in Lincoln leads up to this cathedral, it's kind of like the anticipation of the view of what's kind of up the top of the hill. And what I can do here is use the brush tool to paint some exposure on, just to kind of highlight that, because at the moment it just sits into the back of the image. So yeah, at the moment it's quite, and the sun's on the left actually, so make sure that kind of reflects. So again, bring the exposure up, and the sunset was over to the left hand side of the image, so I'm just going to add in some warmth as well, so increase the temperature. Cool, again, it says before and after. And what I forgot to do is add a new brush. So I use the same brush there, so I'll go for new, and then for doing the second spire of the cathedral, go for brush and new brush, which we've got here. And you can just start painting the exposure on. For the purposes of the tutorial, I'm just doing this quickly, but you know, for an image that you're going to blow up and spend a lot of time, you know, printing, displaying on a wall, which fine art's kind of meant to be, well, say meant to be done, it's one of the uses of fine arts, produced to be viewed. You want to take your time, make sure that all of the details in the picture and all of your post-processing, you take the time and care over it so you get the best results. I think you get the gist of the technique that I'm using here. So as you can see, this just adds a bit more emphasis at the top of the hill and the cathedral. Just adds a bit more to the image. Also use the radial tool. You can use that to control the brightness, for example, of these lamps here. So you can, if they weren't maybe as bright, they are quite bright in this image anyway, but you can use it to emphasize maybe the lamps or increase the color, or even the light that they're bringing off. So you see a lot more light that's been given to the background of that image, or section of the image. For me though, what I can do is when you get that as you like it, you can duplicate that and take it over there. And that actually works a bit better over there because it brings some light to that side of the image. Just add a bit more warmth. So as you can see here, I don't know, my personal opinion is the lights in Lincoln are orange, but these are pretty saturated to me. So what we can do then is go down and make some corrections. So if you go to the hue, you could go onto this tool here, this kind of color selection tool under hue, and then you could click on the color you want to adjust. And then with the mouse held down, you can go up and down the slider and you can change the hue of the colors. So if there's too much orange in it, you can put maybe a bit of yellow. And then you can do the same with saturation. So if you want to lower the saturation of that particular color, you can just click and drag. So I'm going to take a little bit of saturation out, just maybe even add a little bit of saturation in with the blue. I'll show you the reason for doing that in a minute. And then one final thing will be exposure. And then voila, we're pretty much there. So it's kind of a before and after. So that's how I edited it before. So as you can see with the edit that I did before, I've taken a bit more time and gone into, I've even done some local adjustments to add some light over on these houses here, just to emphasize. But yeah, that's the first image done, and on to the second image. Cool, so on to the second picture then, taken in the Peak District in the UK. If you haven't been there, highly recommend you go there, check it out. It's an incredible place and there's so much to photograph. It's like a kid in a candy store going there for the first time. Before we go on though, if you have found good value so far in this video, please don't forget to click the like button. It makes a massive difference to the channel. And also click subscribe if you've got good value for the content. We're going to look to bring out loads more content over the course of this channel, and hopefully help you on your photography journey, learning, improving, inspiring everybody on their photography journey. It's kind of the mission of this channel. But yeah, now moving into the Peak District. And one of the things with this picture I took a few weeks ago, so I'm kind of still learning myself. I think we all are, all the time. But yeah, the biggest kind of learning thing I took away from this is I overexposed the image quite a bit in the highlights. So that's why the sky is completely white. The reality I was actually seeing at the time was this beautiful lilac sunset. So it had almost gone down, the sun had gone down below the horizon, and you had this beautiful grade of kind of like pink, purple to blue in the sky. And it's, yeah, incredible. So I'm going to try and bring that back. As you probably saw, I managed to in the previous edit. So I've gone straight for the crop tool again, 16:9, and just put the horizon on the first kind of line, horizontal line for the rule of thirds, and gone for an auto crop. Then go into the highlights, bringing them down, shadows, bring them up. And as you can see, so as we did before, that's quite already bright. We don't even need to bring the shadows up. And the reason for that is the amount of exposure we got at the high end of the histogram. So what I am going to do is lower that exposure right down. And you can kind of use the histogram as a telltale of where's, you know, a good level. And then you can bring up the shadows. That kind of all brings the detail back in, and that's one of the benefits of shooting in RAW. You capture so much data along the dynamic range of the camera. It's, yeah, incredible technology. Then go and do the black and white points, same as we did before. So already that's looking much better. Then into the color. I think Adobe Landscape just makes those greens pop here. And then into the, I try the, again, auto daylight, cloudy and shade, just as a starting point. But I think as shot it's given the most realistic. That's how I remember the actual sunset, and as I'll show you in a minute, I don't know if you've heard of the Adobe color wheel, but we'll go into that in a moment. I think the purples and the greens kind of complement each other quite well. Cool, so as I said, not too much of a fan of texture. There's not really much going on anyway here. But clarity, just taking a bit of clarity down. You see how it softens the image. Dehaze. See a bit of haze in the background. You could use dehaze. I'm personally not too worried about that, to be honest. And then bring the detail out. So we'll need a bit of noise reduction. It's getting dark. And again, trying to make the sum of the noise reduction and the sharpening add up to 100. And see, yeah, it kind of gives a good effect. Keep a clean, sharp image without, without taking as much noise out of the image as possible. Always remove chromatic aberration and pseudo profile corrections. So I've got that for the lens that I took the shot on. That's kind of the basic adjustments complete. Then go into doing some more of the local adjustments. The same as the last one. Even play around with some contrast. Add a bit of contrast in, suffer for some contrast. Cool, so going to the radial tool then. The same as before for this one. You can see here actually, before I do that, the viewer's eyes are naturally taken to the brightest parts of the shot. So this foreground element is quite bright here, and as is the background. So it's kind of a distraction to the viewer. So what I'm going to do here is, that's one of the good things the radial tool is good for. You can kind of bring it up, bring the exposure down again. Again, not too much, so it looks completely stupid, but just a bit. 70 or so. And then again, new one from the top. Cool. And what we'll do is going to lower the exposure to bring some of that detail back into the sky. And we don't want to darken the top of the mountain. So as we did before, we're going to go into range mask, luminance, hold down the option key and drag up the range. Then as the mountains come in, just make sure that they're not affected. If I turn that off and on, you shouldn't have much effect on the mountains. There's a little bit of darkness up there, but it's nowhere near as much as before. And then with this top one, so you can bring the exposure down and even play around with the temperature as well. So bring some of the blues back in, maybe some magenta. And then I think I'm just going to bring the exposure down a little bit more. And that's kind of what I was on about with the pinks and the oranges in the sky going into purple, lilac, into dark blue. It's just a fantastic sunset. It's not too underexposed either. You've got a good range of values across histogram. And I think one final thing I'm going to do for this one is just use the brush tool. What I like to do is just emphasize the road. The winding road kind of acts as a feature leading me towards the sunset and the brighter part of the image. So I kind of just like to add a bit of emphasis there. And as we zoom out, pretty much there is the finished image. What I would do though is go into a lot more detail, as I said in the previous one. If you were going to print the image and blow it up and everything, I'd make sure that, you know, the smallest of details. For example, I'd even take it into Photoshop, and there are quite a few cars over here. So kind of use Photoshop to take them out, even just to kind of show you over here. Buildings are quite white. I just find it quite distracting. I mean, I wouldn't do that with the circular tool, but yeah, definitely darken down over here. And just make sure that the image is perfect for printing. You don't want to spend a lot of money on getting the image printed and then for it to, you know, not be perfect. That includes going through and making sure that there are any spots. So you've got the spot healing tool here. You can go through, then by clicking on visualize spots, you can see any impurities on the sensor. So you can go through and take them out. And Lightroom does a good job of this. Cool, so press F and you get the full screen picture. And there we go. That's how we achieve that fine art landscape photography feel in Lightroom and through our editing process. So one final thing before I leave you that I'm going to show you is what's going on. I kind of alluded to it in the middle of the tutorial, is the Adobe Color Wheel. So if we're going to Chrome, we've already got it prepared. So there are complementary colours which our eyes as humans are naturally drawn to, and kind of colours which just naturally go well together. And that's why maybe some images subconsciously look better than others. So you can adjust the colours on the wheel, and you even got the hex colour codes here. So if you really want to get, refined with your colour code selection. And then as you can kind of see, so for example, I quite like the output of the second picture that I've got here. So you've got the mauves and the purples here contrasting with the greens. If we go back to the colour wheel, we've got the greens and the purples here matching as complementary colours. So it kind of sits nicely. So you can that's one of the things that I like to do, is have a look at it, make a good note of what colours go well together. And then it can help you and aid composition as well. In my opinion, it's one of the little top tips that I try. You've also got going around that kind of golden colour, golden orange colour. And that kind of complements with blue well. So if we go back into Lightroom, what do we see from the first picture we did? That's why I kind of personally think the orange of the light sits well, and that's why I chose to take this as a blue hour shot. So they kind of complement each other well, I thought. It's just another kind of added top tip that I kind of think about when composing and thinking about the shots I'm taking for fine art landscape photography. And there we go, that's my editing process and workflow for editing fine art landscape photography shots in Lightroom. If we missed anything, or if there's anything you want to see on future videos on the channel, please like and comment below, and we'll aim to produce some great content which helps you guys along in your photography journey of education in the future. Till next time, thank you for tuning in and watching. We'll see you in the next video.